And there is one person responsible for what happened here, and that person is now in custody and will be charged soon and will be held accountable.
After an over 30-hour manhunt, authorities say they've got the man who shot and killed political activist Charlie Kirk on the campus of Utah Valley University. Because as the frantic search was ramping up, there has been a lot of chatter and misinformation and theories surrounding Charlie Kirk's death. We're taking some time to discuss some of these theories that have been spreading quite quickly online and in the media, as well as brand new information on the suspect. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Federal and state authorities in Utah say they have arrested the gunman, the man who allegedly took the life of political activist and media personality Charlie Kirk, identifying him during a news conference this morning as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who actually, by the way, lived hours away from Utah Valley University. But authorities say he is the man. They say he is the one who brought a bolt-action rifle to the top of a campus building and fired one shot at Kirk, who, by the way, was speaking in this debate-style event in front of thousands of people. That bullet, and I'm sure you've seen the videos, that bullet hit Kirk in the neck. He was rushed to a hospital, but the married father of two young children was pronounced dead at just 31 years old.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident.
Robinson, he was taken into custody around 10 p.m. He was booked into jail. According to FBI Director Kash Patel, after surveillance images and video of this suspect was released to the public, they received thousands of leads. While he said that they're going to follow up on all those leads, even though there's an arrest, there are still so many theories about what happened here, and you wonder, is it really going to quiet that conversation? We're talking misunderstandings, we're talking misinformation, we're talking up conspiracy theories, general theories. That is what we want to get into right now, because even with someone in custody, a lot of these theories, I wonder, will they continue to circulate? You know that there's going to be people who say, oh, this is just the fall guy, there's something bigger here, maybe there's other people involved. Now, you know we've been on top of the story from the very beginning, and we are able to do that because of the incredible support that we get from our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. This is America's largest injury law firm. This is a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they're so big? Because they win a lot. They have recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. Think about that. In the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. You have another client in Pennsylvania who received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan, they make it so simple. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. So I want to start with the shooting itself. This is a big one. You probably saw this too. The white hat guy, right? Let's take a look.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Now, you see him standing behind Charlie Kirk. So it appears that he touches his hat, then his ear, and then it's followed by a guy right next to him in black who puts his arm out and touches it. Now, that appears to be one of Charlie Kirk's security members. And then right there, right then, that is when Charlie Kirk is shot. So the theory is, were they signaling the shooter? That is a conversation that has been happening online. I mean, look, it is strange and it is weird that out of all topics and out of all times for Kirk to be shot, he's talking about gun violence, talking about transgender people being shooters, and the last word he says before he's shot, the word is violence. It's creepy. It's chilling. It's strange. Now, I will say, it appears, when you look at another video, another angle, those two individuals, when the shot is fired, they look legitimately shocked. I think there's an argument there. They seem to be surprised by the gunfire. And the argument is, right? They're actually in the line of fire too. Now, it does bring up something else. It brings up the issue about whether or not multiple people could in fact be involved. We heard what President Donald Trump said on Wednesday.
My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
I actually asked former CIA and FBI agent Tracy Walder about this before the arrest of Robinson. Take a look. Do you think this is a situation where it was one person acting alone, or do you think it was coordinated and there was some help? I mean, we don't know at this point. I've seen a lot of people talking online about what may or may not have happened. From your perspective, we talked about how it might have been planned. Would you suspect that there could be multiple people involved?
So I think so, but not in the sense that you may think, Jesse.
Okay.
So what I actually think is there are these, they're from Telegram subchannels, those kinds of things on social media where individuals talk about this kind of thing and talk about this kind of violence. So I 100% think that there were individuals in this chat room assisting this person, goading this person on, wanting them to do it, because that absolutely exists in this internet subculture. So that's where I think these accomplices came from, and that's what ultimately needs to be shut down.
Got to talk about something else with the shooting too. So there are certain angles of the shot where there is a belief that Charlie Kirk was shot in the chest, but the bullet ricocheted off of what people believe was him wearing a bulletproof vest, and then it struck him in the neck. Now, according to the BBC, neither the FBI nor Turning Point USA, which Kirk co-founded, neither confirmed whether he was wearing a vest that day. It is interesting, though, because the Daily Mail spoke with Chris Herzog, who is apparently the owner of the Bodyguard Group of Beverly Hills, a private security firm. Herzog claims he spoke with Charlie Kirk during a rally at California State University several months before and warned him that he would be killed at one of these rallies or events unless he took the proper precautions. Now, Herzog's colleague, Mark Wilson, also claims that he spoke with Kirk, telling the Daily Mail, "We're huge Turning Point fans, being conservatives, and we discussed the lack of security because he's up close with these nutcase kids and doesn't appear that he even wears a bulletproof vest. It's super sad what has happened." However, based on the reporting, based on the analysis, it does seem, by most indications, that he was shot directly in the neck. Actually, again, here is what Tracy Walder had to say about that.
I think we want to think that this is some kind of a trained assassin. Maybe we see that in movies, and that's something that we want to see. But the reality is a 200-yard shot, which is about what this is. Again, I don't have the exact data, but a 200-yard shot. I believe he was probably aiming for the head, came in a little bit low, but again, I don't know for sure. This is someone who is familiar, obviously, with weapons. There's no question. I don't think if you've never held a weapon before, you would be able to do that. But this is someone that probably had a scope attached, had been sitting there for a few minutes, got the target in their sights, and got off that shot. So I think it's someone who is moderately to highly familiar with weapons, but not some kind of a trained assassin. Now, if you were talking about 600 yards or more, sure, but I don't feel that that's far enough for this to be some kind of a sharpshooter.
Okay, now I want to move on to this next theory. There is obviously a lot of political high tensions brewing with narratives being pushed that this was a left-wing extremist. I mean, right-wing influencer Mike Cernovich posted on social media that the shooter, quote, was an ideological foot soldier of far left-wing billionaires. Again, this is before the arrest of Robinson. And as reported by outlets like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, there was a preliminary and unverified report that the rifle found in a nearby wooded area, right by the crime scene, had been engraved with statements that, quote, expressed transgender and anti-fascist ideologies. In fact, here's what officials, though, had to say about those apparent engravings during Friday's news conference.
The rifle was determined to be a Mauser Model 98 30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle. The rifle had a scope mounted on top of it. Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices bulges, capital OWO, what's this?" question mark. Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist!" Catch! Up arrow symbol, right arrow, and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao Ciao," and a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO."
And by the way, during that news conference, it was also suggested that this suspect, Mr. Robinson, had said recently that Charlie Kirk was coming to Utah Valley University, that he didn't like him, that he didn't like the viewpoints that he had. This is something Robinson allegedly expressed, and that he had told a family member that Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate. Now, it went both ways when you look online. There were also those, even before Robinson was arrested, who actually thought that the shooter could be a far right-wing extremist. So you saw these kinds of theories on both sides. The bottom line is we don't know yet the exact motive. However, killing a very political figure like Charlie Kirk at this speaking event, right as he's talking about these topics, it's something you got to be thinking about. Now, Kirk, as many of you might know, he was quite opinionated when it came to gun violence and the transgender community, and held polarizing views. So is this something that may or may not have played a role here? We shall see as this develops. And now I have to talk about another theory, okay? Another theory that has been circulating is that a foreign nation may have been involved in Kirk's death. Again, this had been circulating before Robinson's arrest, but you do have to wonder whether or not people will believe that that is still true, despite the arrest. So Sean Hannity said on his Fox News show, quote, "I have a source in the intelligence community, John, that said that there might be post-assassination pieces of a puzzle, that there might be a foreign component to it." And his guest, investigative journalist John Solomon, responded, "Yes, there is a group or two of interest in the Salt Lake City area they're looking at just because of certain recent activities overseas and certain intelligence shared by a foreign friendly from the United States." We don't really know what that means, and why is this significant? To be clear, I'm not saying this in any way is true, but there seems to be growing chatter of foreign involvement. Particularly, you are seeing this theory that of all countries, Israel was involved. We're seeing this idea really percolating on X. But I will tell you, in my opinion, this doesn't seem to make sense at all. I'll explain why. But first, why are users seemingly suggesting this? There is also a user on X who makes the claim that since President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu apparently posted about Charlie Kirk being shot, they allegedly posted it at the same time of 3:02 p.m., that this must mean it's coordinated. And then there are older clips of Charlie Kirk that have started to surface online. Like, there is one of Kirk, apparently recently on Megyn Kelly's program, where he says, quote, "I have less ability sometimes online to criticize the Israeli government about backlash than actual Israelis do. And that's really, really weird." There's another clip where Kirk was on Ben Shapiro's show, who, by the way, is Jewish, a staunch supporter of Israel.
Charlie, we've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border, so like maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says, because I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years.
Obviously, this is in regards to Israel's war in Gaza against Hamas and the purported significant loss of Palestinian lives. But Kirk also had gone on Patrick Bet-David's podcast and spoke about the context of the October 7th attack on Israel that started this whole conflict, saying, how could this happen in a fortified country like this? Quote, "I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun. That's an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is so surveilled." We don't talk about Israeli politics very often. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu is basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu. That's all gone. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go as far as to say Netanyahu knew there was intelligence, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? Now here's the problem with this theory, in my opinion. Charlie Kirk, and this is well documented, went on record publicly, was a devout supporter of Israel and the Jewish people. And it is well documented, particularly in his debates that he had in public forums. You know, Fox News, they dedicated a whole segment to it. And in it, they played different clips of Charlie Kirk. In one, he talked about how Israel changed his life and that he was celebrated as a Christian over there. He said the nation of Israel actually has a place in God's plan for us on this planet. He said there is something special about Israel and said, I think we have a moral commitment to that land. And then while debating someone about the actions of Israel, right, in their war against Hamas, you had this person who criticized the Israeli government, called it evil. Charlie Kirk fought back, saying, it's also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Israel, at its holiest day of the calendar year, besides Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Samek Torah, the 50-year anniversary of the six-day war on Shabbat, Hamas invaded Israel, decided to go recklessly to music concerts, homes, to kibbutzes, and taking 200-plus hostages. They knew what they were doing. When the IDF does something right, they get no credit. When they do life-saving surgeries of a Gazan child, they get no credit. The only operation and entity to blame is Hamas. So when you hear that, it does become hard to digest the idea that he was killed by Israel if he was such a supporter who was advocating what the government was doing and America's support of Israel and advocating this all over to young people. Now, by the way, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he was actually asked about this theory on Newsmax by host Greta Van Susteren. She said, before I let you go, I want you to address one thing, and it's just the absurdity of it. Some of the internet rumors that somehow Israel is behind the Charlie Kirk murder. And, you know, I don't believe it for 1 second, but I want you to, make a statement. It's so absurd. He responds, that's insane. That's insane. Israel also changes the orbit of the moon. Israel pushes the sun. I mean, the whole thing is not only insane, I think it's so absurd, so stupid, and so ridiculous. I can't believe that people are saying that. They just found the perpetrator. They'll get to the bottom of this. But they have no limits. When you hate Jews, when you hate the Jewish state, you're willing to say anything and promote all these absurd rumors. Now, Netanyahu separately called Charlie Kirk, quote, an extraordinary friend, once-in-a-generation figure, said, quote, he was a defender of our common Judeo-Christian civilization. He was unbelievably excited to walk in the footsteps of Jesus here. He valued our bond, the bond between America and Israel. Oh, by the way, there's also this one, too. This was, by the way, really reported by the New Republic, popped up on X a lot. The theory, the conspiracy theory, that President Trump was behind what happened to Charlie Kirk. Have you heard this one? The idea being that this was a way to distract from the Epstein file saga and the backlash that his administration has received, including the criticism that there was a cover-up, right? We've covered the Epstein case, the Epstein saga a lot here on Sidebar, by the way. But I mean, just look at this post from Morgan J. Freeman, an apparent filmmaker who has over 470,000 followers on X. He said, how do we know Trump didn't order Kirk's assassination as a distraction from Epstein and a tactic to start the civil unrest he needs to declare martial law and delay the 2026 midterms? That post received more than 2.4 million views and 60,000 likes. And that makes me think about something else. I want to highlight something as we talk about theories and particularly social media. As you know, a theory can spread like wildfire online. It was reported on X. People were throwing out specific names or identities of the potential shooter before the arrest of Robinson. Reuters reported that there was at least one video posted after the Kirk shooting, falsely identifying a man who was 700 miles away as being the suspect. That was actually an arrest video from June, all the way out in California, apparently. There was another of a video of a man running away, suggesting that was Kirk's shooter, but that was from a shooting in Reno, Nevada back in July. The New York Times reported that there were those online who attributed the shooting to a transgender woman. One I have to highlight in particular, and this was focused upon by the New York Times as well. Do you remember when police initially detained an older man at the event, like immediately? The immediate reaction was this was the shooter because there were reports that he had actually said that he did the shooting. Turns out That was the allegation. Turns out, according to reporting from the Salt Lake Tribune, that was 71-year-old George Zinn, who law enforcement indicated they took into custody on suspicion of obstruction of justice. He was released, ruled out as being the suspect, ruled out as being the shooter. However, what happened? According to the New York Times, users on X, they started falsely identifying him as 77-year-old Canadian man Michael Mallinson, who arguably resembled that man that was detained. He was all the way out in Toronto at the time of the shooting. Told the Times that he was really upset because social media started flooding with his old pro-democratic social media posts. He apparently was being called a far-left extremist, pure evil. One post targeting him had over 3 million views, apparently. Now, he actually explained that he gets this call from his daughter telling him that his photos were circulating online, falsely attributing him as the shooter. He said in an interview, "I'm just shocked by it, how quickly it can happen, how one's name and photo can get spread around quite quickly." And the Times reported that the speculation may have started through an account called Fox 11 Reno that is actually not a real broadcast affiliate in Nevada. It's rather a fictitious account. By the way, remember I talked about other countries? Utah Governor Spencer Cox said one of the things that is amplifying misinformation are foreign bots from China and Russia, saying our team, the state team, and I'm sure the federal team as well, we are seeing our adversaries want violence. China, we have bots from Russia, China, all over the world that are trying to instill disinformation and encourage violence. There you have it, some of the theories that we've seen so far. We will continue our coverage of the Charlie Kirk killing. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.